Hello, everyone. My name is Pastor Roger Hernandez,
I'm Kathy Hernandez.
and we're very glad to be with New Life today.
Thank you so much for the invitation. We really appreciate it.
Pastor Hughes and his beautiful wife have invited us.
Correct. Tony.
Yeah,
Pastor Chris.
And we are very thankful for the invitation. And we're going to talk about limits.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, we're going to talk about limits. We're going to talk about boundaries. Probably coming out of this pandemic, couples are trying to figure out what boundaries they used to have that they no longer have.
Mm-hmm.
I can think of some boundaries that were obliterated by the pandemic.
Correct.
Like, for example, you would tell your kids, no screen time, only 1 hour of screen time.
Yeah.
And now they're doing...
At school, everything's on the screen, correct. Mm-hmm.
So how do you have boundaries with the mother-in-law that comes in to live with you and goes like this to see if there's any specks of dust in your phone, right? What do you do with your brother-in-law that moved into the house and can get a little flirtish? What do we do with people who are working with you and you really feel uncomfortable? They make you feel uncomfortable. What kind of boundaries are important for us to set? So I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to read a couple of scriptures because our basis is the Bible, and it says my beautiful wife can read much better than I. I'm going to allow her to read a couple of passages that are really relevant. The Twitter of the Bible is the book of Proverbs,
correct.
and here are two of those hard-hitting passages. Okay, this is not for the faint of heart. Let's go with the first one.
Our first one is found in Proverbs chapter 19, verse 19. It says, a hot-tempered person must pay the penalty. Rescue them, and you will have to do it again.
Okay.
I'm sure I know we've been in that situation more than once personally here in our family.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another great verse. Proverbs, once again, this time chapter 25, verse 17. Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house, too much of you, and they will hate you. That's a great one.
All right, so let's
some boundaries. We need some boundaries.
Let's talk about those two texts for a moment. The first one is the clear indication that it's not your job to save everybody.
Absolutely, correct.
The temptation would be to try to save people.
Mm-hmm.
In our home, I'm more of a saver.
Yes, you are. With the children, absolutely. Yes, you are. He's the softie.
He's
the softie. And I'm much more by the rule, by the book.
Yeah. But it's clear that sometimes, when we try to become saviors, we end up crucified.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm. And so it's important for us to understand that we are not to rescue people. It's not unless they're drowning, then by all means,
of course,
rescue them. And then the other text, this is one you really like, right?
Yes, because I do remember oftentimes my kids bringing friends over.
Yeah,
time and time
and
time again, all our food.
Mercy.
I'm like, they're still here? When are they going home? Overstay, they're welcome.
Yeah. And there's always somebody that comes over at Christmas, Thanksgiving, that you're like, okay, it's time to go. And you send like hints. They don't understand boundaries, right? You send like little subtle hints, like you start washing dishes and they're like, I'm like, well, I'm going to wash dishes now. Okay, go ahead. I'll wait for you to finish so we can continue the conversation. So why is it important to set limits? Our task for today is to try to help us understand, coming out of the pandemic, there were probably some limits or boundaries that were obliterated. Somebody said that good fences make good neighbors.
Oh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm. And it's important for us to be intentional about our boundaries. So we want to talk about three things today with my beautiful bride of 30 years. Well, we met 30 years ago, but we didn't get married 30 years ago. But we've been together. We've been together a long time.
Yes, we have. Yep. We'll soon, very soon. Next year's 30.
Three things we want to share with you today. Number one, what are the three responses when somebody in your life, especially we're talking about families today,
Correct.
somebody in your family unit or a close family
Mhm.
friend is breaking or overpowering or ignoring boundaries.
Mhm.
These are three things you can do.
Or even having behavior that you feel the need to have a boundary. Right? Yes.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So
Yes.
you need to establish a boundary. They're having a
Correct.
behavior that is boundary warranted.
Correct. Correct.
Number two, we're going to talk about myths. There's a great book. This is where I got the myths from. It's a great book by John Townsend called Boundaries.
Okay.
It's a fantastic book to read. And then number three, what's the process to set boundaries?
Correct.
If you have any questions, you can text text us. No, not really text us, but send us a message. We are on YouTube.
Correct.
Our
Mhm.
channel is Pastor Roger Hernandez. We have stuff in English and Spanish. You can ask your questions in the chat. Pastor Hughes and his beautiful wife will be answering some of these questions later, and we just want to strengthen the family unit. So let's jump right in.
Correct.
All right. Let's give a couple of examples. I'll give a couple of examples. Maybe you can give an example.
Yeah.
These are people who need boundaries.
Correct.
I mentioned earlier an in-law that comes in to live with you. It's your house, right? You can put the sofa in the ceiling if you want to, because it's your house. But the person makes not direct comments, but indirect comments, and it's bothering you.
All right.
Yeah, they're like, I can't understand why we can't cook every single time. Why do we have to eat food the next day?
Oh, leftovers.
Leftovers,
Oh,
right?
okay.
They said, I remember when I was I had children, I would not let them stay up past 9, and you let your kids stay up past 10.
Mhm.
And they're always making comments about your parenting style, about the way you fix your house, about the way you fix your meals,
Mhm.
right? So that would be an example of somebody that needs some boundaries.
Okay.
What would be another one?
Well, now that you mentioned that, our daughter, the youngest of my biological daughters,
Mhm.
she has set some boundaries with me
Okay.
when we're in the kitchen.
Okay. Do tell.
We cook a little different, and sometimes when we're in there cooking and she's doing something her way, my temptation is to say, "Hey, why don't you do it like this? I think it'll work out better like this."
Oh,
But
mercy.
she has to remind
So
me.
this is not only for other people, this is
Correct.
for us.
Yes. So she has to remind me, "Okay, Mom, thanks. I'd like to do it my way." And so sometimes I have to be respectful of the fact that she's cooking in her kitchen. She's married now, she's a grown woman, and she's cooking in her kitchen. And if she wants to do something a certain way that I don't think is the right way to do it, sometimes I just need to, okay, I'm watching you do it in a different way. Let's see if I learned something from you, right? So that's a boundary that's been set for me.
That is a fantastic illustration. Maybe I'm talking to somebody right now who has a family member, maybe a distant family member, maybe a member of the family of your spouse,
Okay.
who's inappropriate in the way they communicate with you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're a little flirtatious. Maybe when they come in for a hug, they linger a little bit too much. There's people in your life that make you feel uncomfortable.
Correct.
There are people that like to tell dirty jokes
Mm.
in your presence, and you don't appreciate it.
That's true.
Maybe they talk about your weight or your size.
They're all constantly commenting on, "You're going to eat that?" Or
mercy.
Something like that. Yes.
You're on fire today, Kathy. And like, man, did you gain weight since last time I saw you? Did you or like, man, I'm glad you're married to my brother, because if you weren't, I would have already hit on you.
Okay,
like,
gotcha.
What what makes you
Correct.
believe that I would even like you? Like,
right.
You and you.
So what are some ways that we react to that?
Correct.
What are some ways that we react when people maybe are crossing some lines or crossing some boundaries or some areas that we feel uncomfortable with? What's one way, Roger, that people deal with that?
So there are three ways that people deal with the setting of boundaries.
All righty.
All right. This is our point number one.
Mm-hmm.
The first, in point number one, we have 3 points because we like points, because I'm a pastor and I like alliteration. So the first thing you can do, which would be not a good thing to do, is that you tolerate it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You tolerate it. You're like, this is just who they are. They're always flirtatious. It doesn't matter if what I say, they don't respect what I tell them. That's just the way my mother-in-law is. That's just the way Kathy is. That's just the way she's always going to be.
Or I don't really feel like having a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm the type that's not confrontational. So I'll just tolerate it. I'd rather, or I know that if I, mention something, it's going to turn into something much bigger, or they're going to get hurt, or they'll be upset. So I'll just tolerate it. So these are, or sometimes you might even feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like you as a person feel uncomfortable confronting it. So you'd rather tolerate it.
Yeah. Some of us don't have the gene of confrontation. I'm talking to somebody right now. Some of us don't have the gene of confrontation. Some of us would rather tolerate dysfunction than work through the difficult issues to achieve the opposite of dysfunction, which is function. No.
Healthy relationships.
Exactly.
Correct. Yes.
So that's one way to deal with it.
Uh-huh.
Right? If somebody says something inappropriate, somebody does something inappropriate, somebody behaves in a way that's inappropriate, that needs to be some clear boundaries. One way to deal with it is to just accept it.
Tolerate it.
You tolerate it.
But you and I both know, Roger, that can only last so long.
Absolutely.
That can't go on forever and ever. That starts to get old, or it will build up. And what are some reactions that people have? And when they're just constantly tolerating and tolerating and tolerating.
The blow up eventually is bigger than if you had the difficult conversation earlier. So you want to avoid the blow up. Okay. That's why you tolerate it. But eventually it's going to blow up. And when that blows up, it's going to be bigger than the blow up you would have had.
Or you thought you would have had.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
You can explode. You can lash out in anger. You can become passive aggressive. You can take it out on the people around you because you can't confront that person, but you're still mad. So now you're irritable with the people who love you.
All very good points. Absolutely. I know that that's happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've done it with my own children as they're teenagers. Sometimes you're like, do I really want to pick that fight today? So you'll tolerate it and they'll do it again. And you just tolerate it. And then one day they do nothing that's related to that. And all of a sudden you're like, ah! And then they're like, what happened? Why are you so upset, Mom? That was no big deal. And I was like, you got it all built up. So that explains, what one of the reactions of tolerating and tolerating.
That's what the Bible is saying, right? Seldom set foot in your neighbor's house. Too much of you and they will hate you. Eventually they'll say, hey, listen.
Right.
You just come in here too much,
Right.
You don't have to go home, but you need to get up out of here. So that's one way, not a healthy way.
Absolutely.
The second way that people deal with boundaries is that they try to avoid the person.
And I thought these were kind of the same.
Uh-huh.
But after talking to you and talking it through, I realized they're really not.
They're not.
They're not the same. Tolerate is you're hanging in there, you see the person, you let them do what they're doing. Avoid is you see that person coming and you just go the other direction.
Correct.
You go into the you go into the lunchroom at work, right? And all of a sudden, you're probably gonna finish your lunch over at your desk.
Yeah.
When you see the person coming in that you don't want to have that, or is constantly going over your boundaries. So avoiding is actually like trying not to be around that person, trying to spend at least amount of time with that person, trying to get away from altogether being around that person. That's the difference between tolerating and avoiding.
Correct. Tolerating, you're in the room and you're listening to this conversation that this person is having, how it's criticizing other people, but you just tolerate. You're like, this is just what I'm just gonna have to deal with it. The other avoiding is that you don't even show up to the Thanksgiving meal. You look for ways to be strategically unavailable.
Understood. Yeah.
You're like, I'm not even, You know that person goes to eat lunch at 12:30,
Mm.
and you go to eat lunch at 1:30. Like you expressly set appointments for 12:30 on a Zoom call, so you will not have not even the temptation. And if somebody says, "Hey, let's go have lunch right now," you're like, "Man, I got a meeting right now."
Mm-hmm.
That's not healthy.
Absolutely.
Because
people will start wondering, like, why are you always avoiding me? Eventually, it'll come across,
correct.
especially when it comes to family. Oh, they never come, or I've invited them and they don't ever show. And so it turns into maybe something more than what it should be.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the second thing.
Correct.
And then the third, which I think is the healthiest,
Mm-hmm.
is to set boundaries.
Set the boundaries.
And be very intentional in setting the boundaries. So how do you set the boundaries? If the third one is a good one, how do you set the boundaries?
Are we going to talk about that now, or are we going to get into the myths?
Yeah. Well, we'll get to the myths, and then we'll go to this one. Yeah, that's true. So before we tell you how to set the boundaries, because we want to end with the bang.
Correct.
Bam,
correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna try to eliminate some myths that you and I have concerning boundaries.
Absolutely.
Okay. You know that there are three ways you can go. One you can avoid, one you can tolerate, or one you can set. But what are some myths? Because as you're looking to set boundaries, these things are going to come, they're going to pop in your head.
Yep.
Or other people are going to tell you these things that are myths. And myths are myths. It's a myth.
In other words, it's not
that
true.
LeBron is the best basketball player in the world. It's a myth. Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time. It's a myth, right? The Cubans talk with their hands. No, that's not a myth. That's actually true. All right. So what would be some myths? Let's talk quickly about 4 myths, right? These are things that when you start to set boundary, either somebody will tell you or you would think to yourself. The first myth, we call it the selfish myth. What does that mean?
Maybe, does it mean that you feel like I'm being selfish if I set boundaries?
Mm-hmm.
Is that, or are you talking about more of like people will think I'm selfish
Both.
if I'm saying, oh, so it's both. It can go both ways.
Yeah.
All right. So I can see that going both ways for sure.
Uh-huh.
I might feel like, well, I'm being selfish by setting these boundaries because I'm really just thinking about myself and how I'm feeling. And I just don't want to be uncomfortable. So I'm the one who's going to set these boundaries, and I'm not really taking into consideration other people. So I may think that I'm being selfish.
Correct.
And likewise, the other way, they might feel like, oh, you're setting that boundary, because you're only thinking of yourself.
Correct.
You're not thinking about other people.
And then this is a great manipulator strategy. They'll tell you, well, you're so selfish, right? Why can't you just laugh a little bit? Why can't you just enjoy this? Why are you always only thinking about yourself? What? I just ask you for a favor. What? I've done favors for you. So I tell people the following: when people tell me that I'm selfish, this is the counsel that I want to give people today who are watching this. But congratulations for sticking with us so far. The best still yet to come. This is a good counsel. You tell me what you think about it.
All right.
If you're feeling selfish or somebody's telling you that you're selfish, and then they will tell you something like this: man, I've done many favors for you. Why can't you do this favor for me? They say, hey, can you give me a ride at 5 o'clock in the morning? And you are going to be up working till 12. So you don't want to get up at 4 because you know the type of day you're going to have. But you say, I cannot do it. So they tell you, man, you're so selfish. After all that I have done for you. So here's the problem. Here's the problem. You have to ask that person, and you have to ask yourself, so what you did for me, was that a gift or a loan?
Oh, that's a good one. For sure.
Yeah, because if it was a gift, I'm not always going to remind you of the fact that I gave you a gift.
Exactly.
But if it was a loan, then at some point
you want to get repaid.
Correct. Like, it doesn't mean that the loans don't help you. Like, loans help you too.
Absolutely.
But at some point I'm going to cash it in. Right. And some people are like that. They're going to try and make you feel selfish because they will say, hey, after all I've done for you, this is not selfish. Setting boundaries is not selfish. In fact, it is consistent with biblical teaching of being good stewards. You don't have unlimited time, effort, energy, mental capacity, emotional fortitude Any more words?
No, I think you covered it all.
You're not unlimited. You don't have unlimited,
Absolutely.
and because you don't have unlimited, you have to have some boundaries. Because if you're not, you're gonna burn out.
Now, I want to make something clear. Probably just clarify. It's not like if someone asks you once to do this for them.
Yeah.
It's just it's a constant, right? Like it's somebody who's not respecting your boundaries or not understanding, and they do it more than once. You know, when someone does it for the first time, if they ask you for this favor, you know, if you're able to do it, great. Yeah. But they do this often, or they wait till the last minute to ask for a favor or to try, you know, and then if you can't do it, they make you feel bad. You know, like you couldn't help them. Or
they want you to
like
drop everything you're doing.
Yeah.
So you can help them.
Correct.
And then if you don't, they call you selfish. They're crazy how that works.
So you know, it's okay to be helping people, but there are sometimes moments that you have to set some boundaries, you know, for yourself.
Correct.
And when you set these boundaries, you're actually being the best you for those who are closest to you.
Exactly.
For the people that you have to deal with or live with also. So it isn't necessarily being selfish. You're actually doing yourself and those who work with you, live with you, you're helping them to have a better version of you.
Absolutely.
By not overextending yourself all the time. But that's, I believe,
that's myth number one. Let's go. Let's run through this last three pretty quickly. Number one is selfish. Number two is a myth that boundaries are permanent.
Okay, that's true.
Right.
Boundaries.
I've bought some property, and there are some, you know, there's some properties that you have 2 lots in one, and you can subdivide, or this lot you can subdivide. There's a boundary now where your property is 1 acre, but you can subdivide and make 2 half-acre lots. So this concept of that boundaries are forever. Just because you told somebody, no, I cannot serve in church right now because it's a very busy season, doesn't mean I'm not going to be able to serve later on,
or 6 months from now, or something like that. Okay, understood.
Correct. So that's a second myth, that boundaries are permanent. You own the boundaries, and because you own them, you can change them.
I like that. I like that a lot. Very good. Yeah, they're not permanent. They're malleable, depending on the situation. For example, right now, my time is a little bit more limited.
Correct. Because you're studying for a certification.
Exactly. I'm studying to become a certified meeting planner or professional. And I now have specific boundaries on my time. Like this is my reading time. This is my block of time. This is not going to be forever. Yeah. This is just for a season. This is just for a time. And I don't want, you know that. It could feel like it's forever, right?
Yeah.
But it's not. It is a season right now. So I have to set boundaries in order to be able to study and do well on the exam.
Number 3, the myth is that boundaries are going to make you feel guilty always. Okay, this is a myth because...
How is that different than selfish?
Okay, selfish is just for me. Right. But they're connected. Selfish and guilty are connected. But sometimes I'm guilty even though I don't feel that I'm selfish. Okay, I might feel guilty because of how it affects you.
Okay, yeah. So you're saying to yourself, I have to put this boundary, but I feel guilty that I have to put this boundary because of how you're going to feel once I put this boundary. This often happens with our children as well. I feel at least I remember that when I had the kids at home. When I put some boundaries, sometimes I would feel bad that I had to set these boundaries, and it wasn't pleasant to have to do that. But if I didn't, things would get worse for them.
Correct. And then number 4, myths are selfish, permanent, guilty, and then number 4 and this once again is a tool of the manipulator, that because you're setting boundaries means you're mad. That's a myth.
Okay, correct.
Why you mad? Why you mad, bro? Why you mad? For example, we were talking earlier about an inappropriate comment from somebody in your family towards you, towards your body, towards your height, towards you with a part of your anatomy. Right, and then so they're joking with you, but you don't appreciate the jokes.
Correct.
And you said some boundaries. You're like, listen,
I'd appreciate it.
I didn't want to call you out in front of people, but I just want to talk to you respectfully, one-on-one, and said, I don't appreciate the jokes you're making about my height. I don't appreciate the your jokes you made me about the fact that I don't have any hair, about the fact that I got a little rounder on the waist. I don't like comments about my weight. I don't like when you make comments about the way that I look.
Someone might miss.
A manipulator. This is how you differentiate. What would a manipulator do?
What, I didn't mean that, or why are you taking it so serious?
Exactly. They always
why
say,
are you so sensitive?
Why you're so sensitive?
Mm-hmm.
Why you're so mad? It was only a joke. You can't take a joke. What kind of sense of humor do you have? Right. So just because you set boundaries, it doesn't mean that you are angry.
Mm-hmm.
It means that you're setting boundaries. And if they try to turn it around on you, means that you have a problem that is bigger than what you thought you had.
Interesting.
All right, so let's jump into the last section then.
Correct.
And the last section is, how do you set boundaries?
Yes. How do you set boundaries?
How do you set boundaries? And we have 3 C's for you, so we can take it home. We're gonna bring it home. These 3 C's. Number 1, clear.
Boundaries should be clear. When you're having a conversation with a person, it's best when you kind of hone in on the thing that is bothering you. Don't go at them with a bunch of stuff. Just try to figure out what is the one thing really that you really need for them to stop doing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, or that you wish would change.
Don't beat around the bush.
Correct.
Yeah, go straight to it.
Yes, or don't paint a huge picture with a bunch of stuff. Just pick if there was one thing that you could ask them to change, stop, or whatever. Or start, right? If you could do that, what would that one thing be? And let that be the boundary.
Yeah. So you're clear.
Very clear.
You're like, I don't appreciate, it is hurtful to me when you do this or don't do this. And I'm asking you to please stop it or start it. Or, for example, a normal one with the kids. It's like, we're going to bed at 11 and you're playing video games and watching movies with your friends till 3 a.m. The boundary is, number 1, that's disrespectful, number 1. The boundary is, you're out of school, you're 16, 17. I don't mind if you stay up longer than us. What I would like to ask you is that I don't want to hear the movie in my room.
Correct. So
that is a clear boundary.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh no, because if I don't hear it, I don't feel it, it's not the same, and they start fighting with you. You have to be clear on the boundary. Listen, those comments are inappropriate. I'm going to ask you not to do them. Listen, Mom, this is the way that I cook.
Correct.
This is my kitchen.
Right.
Okay. I will ask for you. I love you so much, Mom. I love you so much, but I will ask for you not to
tell me how
to cook in my own kitchen.
Correct.
Right. Clear.
Mm-hmm.
The depth and the connection that you have with that person is going to be determined by the ability to have difficult conversations. You cannot go the rest of your life without having difficult conversations. Put that in the chat, write it down. It's important. So it's important to be clear.
People should respect your boundaries.
Yeah, they should.
They should respect you, and they should not make you feel bad for setting those boundaries. Like you said, that will determine the relationship. That will determine how much they appreciate you as a person, and try to understand that. And if they don't,
mm-hmm.
then you probably need to just think about, okay, this relationship needs a little more work.
Yeah.
We need to work on this. We need to build on this. What are some boundaries that maybe you and I have set? Can you think of one that we can give it an example? That's been clear, a clear boundary.
One of the clear boundaries is whenever your mom used to call our home when we were first married,
mm-hmm.
and every time after that conversation, you would be crying, and then you would come to me and tell me, this is what she said, and I would hear you talking to her, and you will cry every single time,
Mhm.
which affected our relationship. And then one day I took the phone and I said, please do not call here again.
Until the conversation's a positive one.
Correct.
Correct.
If you cannot have a positive conversation, do not call here again. And that proceeded to elicit some interesting reactions from the other side.
Absolutely.
I thought they thought I was Fidel Castro and stuff like that. But things
it
worked.
it took a minute.
It took
didn't
a minute,
and it wasn't easy,
but it worked.
but it finally did work.
Clear,
Mhm.
right? Clear. You cannot use the phone after 10. Clear boundaries.
Correct.
Clear. The clearer, the better, right? And if somebody cannot respect your nose, that person is not your friend. Like people say, well, this is another myth. We didn't talk about this myth, but people say, well, if I tell them no, or if I refuse it, or if I make a comment, then it's going to affect our relationship. If somebody gets upset because you correct them or you tell them something that's a boundary, that relationship was already in trouble before
Correct.
you had this conversation.
Correct.
So clear.
Correct.
All right.
That's a
clear.
good one. Good start. Good place
Clear.
to start. Clear.
All right.
And then once you make the clear boundary, they should know that you kind of are serious about this, that there will be.
How will they know we're serious? What makes it, what gives it away that we're serious?
So the word is consequence. And I know that sounds heavy, but basically it's more, let's take the example of the kid in your home, your child who is staying up late to watch movies, and you're okay with them staying up late to watch a movie because they're out of school and stuff, but you cannot hear it in the room.
Yeah.
So you made the boundary, you said it very clear. Next time, maybe they didn't do it the next time, but the following time after that, 2:00 in the morning, you get woken up because, it's like the bass on that speaker of that television or whatever, or your surround sound is so heavy that it wakes you up, right?
Yeah.
So you should have set a consequence beforehand.
Correct.
Otherwise, what is the incentive for them to stop doing that?
Correct.
So you say, if that does not happen, you will not be allowed to stay up to watch the movie.
Correct.
Or if you and your friends come over and you make a mess and you don't clean up after yourselves, the next time you ask for your friends to come over, I'll say no.
Correct.
So there's some consequences.
Here's another that semi-common one. When you have children and you take them to your in-laws or your parents and you tell them they cannot have candy. They're supposed to be in bed by 9, and then they come back and they say, they gave us candy and we were sleeping on, we were awake all night long, and you tell your in-law. I know grandparents are supposed to spoil
their kids,
but if you have a structure that you want to follow, you have to be clear. I do not want my children to watch those type of cartoons. I don't want my children to eat, all these trash foods. I don't want my children up past 10. And if that doesn't happen, I'm not going to be able to bring my kids here. So it seems like a very harsh thing to do, but some people don't understand until you set consequences.
That's true.
Right? So up to now, you might be agreeing with us and you're like, that sounds reasonable. Like, I'm clear, right? I talk about consequences. That person at your job who's making inappropriate comments, I want you to stop it. If you don't, I'm going to go to HR.
Correct.
Okay, I'm going to report you to HR. That person at your church who does the same thing. Like, when you shake my hand, I want you to shake my hand. I don't want you to hug me.
Correct.
Don't hug me. And if you hug me again, we're going to have a conversation with the pastor. Right? And that's clear consequence. Correct. So what would be the third? The third is where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely.
What's the third one?
The third one is you have to actually go through with it. You have to be consistent. So you set the clear boundary. You told them what the consequences, and then let's say that they they choose not to follow that, or they choose not to adhere or respect that boundary, right? So they cross the boundary. So you have to be consistent.
Yeah, and this is where we get in trouble.
We were talking about. I didn't realize that you and I had met the same lady, but when I was sharing the story the other day, you're like, "Wait a second,
it's a hilarious story.
I think I know that lady."
It's a hilarious story.
We were on vacation with our grandchildren, and we were at the pool. And I was sitting there watching my two grandchildren. There was another grandmother there as well. And the whole time she seemed very upset. And she was
by the way, this is a grandmother, by the way.
She was sitting back and she was crossing her arms and she was looking at her grandkids all upset. And I was like, man, she's just having a bad time. And so she started yelling at them in Spanish. So I understood obviously what they were saying. And she was saying, "You're swimming in the deep. If you keep going in the deep, we're gonna take all of you out of here. Oh, stop!" And then she would say, I'm the only one out here who's having a terrible time. You see anybody else out here? Tell us. I'm the only one because I've got grandkids who don't listen. And then she'd scream at them and she's like, "If you do it one more time, we're leaving."
Yeah, I'm taking you out of this pool.
And so she'd
taking you out of this pool.
Then she'd take them out, right?
Okay, clear.
Right.
And consequences.
Correct.
Clear and consequences. Yeah.
So they did it again and she'd take them all out. And then the kids would all be like that and with their towels. And then she's just like, "Okay, that was your last chance. You do it again, and for real, we're leaving." And so they'd get back in the pool. And she did that like 5 times. I swear, got him out of the pool. This is your last chance, and got him back in. So the kids are like, yeah, whatever. Like that.
I don't know how to swim. Who's gonna jump in there and save you? It's a Dominican lady. The Dominican lady had like the full dress and like socks up to her ankles. It's up to her knees. It's like the whole. If you think about how a Dominican grandma looks, it's her. It's a stereotypical Dominican grandma. And she would say, if you swim further than the 4-foot line, I'm gonna take you out of this pool and you're not gonna be swimming again because I can't jump in there. If you start drowning, I'm gonna drown too. And the kid would get like softy, and
then get closer.
And then what? But he passed the line. He's like, "Get out now!"
And then they do it again. It was terrible. And the problem was because she never came through with her consequence. They were like, "We'll just keep pushing it. We'll just keep pushing it because she'll get mad, whatever. But we'll get to do what we want to do anyway." And that happens, sometimes even in marriages. There's something that you don't like, that you don't appreciate. You set a boundary with your husband or your spouse. And they'll push it. They'll push that line. If we don't have the consequence, then so for right now, I'll go back to me. If I don't get the reading that I need to get in by a certain time, my husband has this thing called tickle time, which helps him relax every night. And without his tickles, on his back, he can't go to sleep. But it's
almost better than sex.
If he's got me running around, almost. If he's got me running around, busy all that day, we need to do this, we gotta do that, and I'm like, I can't read. Okay. If I can't read, there's just no tickle time. Yeah. There's no tickle time.
I make time for the reading, bro. Make time for the reading.
So he really loves that tickle time, and he has, and there was a one time that I was like, hey, I didn't get my reading, and there's no tickles, and that didn't happen. It did not happen.
The only one time though.
So there's a consequence for that.
Here's a summary, Kathy. The main point of John Townsend's book that I appreciated, he might have other main points, but the main point that I appreciated is that boundaries make you free.
Wow.
Right? They're free from expectations, free from impositions,
guilty,
free from guilt, free from having to tolerate craziness on an ongoing basis. It makes you free. And not only does it make you free, it blesses the other person too. Because we sometimes assume, why is this person like this? I'm just going to pray for them. Because they should know better. And we believe in our hearts that they should know. Remember I told you the other day that I had a church member that had like a needle.
He would poke at you.
He would stick me with the needle after church.
I know that sounds crazy. That's actually happened.
Weird. It's like a weird
it was like a
thing.
joke. He thought it was funny, so he'd come and poke him in the side with the needle in his finger.
And I tolerated it. Right? Then I avoided it. And then one day I stopped him, and he was upset about it. He thought it was a joke. Right? We believe that if we put limits on people, that they're going to get upset, but this is actually blessing them. Right? This is blessing them. This is helping them, because they don't know this behavior is affecting other people the way they do until you tell them.
Absolutely.
And many years later, I've had conversations with people who have thanked me. Thank you for telling me this. Thank you for helping me in that. Because at that point, I did not get it. But now I do.
Yeah.
All right? Boundaries make you free. So we want to pray for you. And we are praying that you may continue to grow in this boundary setting. And as you're coming out of the pandemic, whatever boundaries were thrown on the ground, you can rebuild them. And whatever boundaries did not exist, you can build them. Be clear, right? Talk about the consequences and be consistent.
Absolutely.
Right? We're going to pray for you now. And once again, if you want to reach out to us, we have a YouTube channel. Yeah. We have lots of stuff in English, lots of stuff in Spanish. We want to help couples. We want to help your relationship. And thank you once again for the invitation. Kathy, would you pray for all the people who are watching right now?
Yeah, definitely. Heavenly Father, this is a topic that can be difficult for many of us because of how uncomfortable sometimes it feels to have the boundaries or to set boundaries. But at the same time, Lord, we know that it's important. We thank you, Lord, for giving us your word. And in your word, you've even set boundaries for us so that we could be happier, so that we could be safer, so that we could be closer to you. So, Lord, because you have given us the example to begin with your word, and with the life that you want us to live, we just ask that you can help us grow in this area. And as we're coming out of the pandemic, lots of things are going to be changing once again. Help us, Lord, to be able to set the boundaries that we need to set in order for us to be healthy, whole human beings, Lord. And that way we can create that same environment for those around us as well. We ask these things in your name, Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. May you be blessed. And remember, if God is for us, those who are against us are wasting their time.